We are live, Amanda. Yes. Let's just double check our Facebook pages and make sure that we are live here. Hi, everybody. My name is Yvette LaFleur, and we are live. We're good. And I am here with Amanda Wright from Creative Genius Solutions. And we're here to talk about brain health. Brain health. I mean, it is something that has been very prevalent and I want to say in the news, in the reading and social media, because there's been so much anxiety and depression and so many challenges that have come out of post-pandemic, post-lockdown time. So I thought bringing Amanda here to talk about brain health, how it ties into energy work, and how you can support yourself would be a perfect merge between what we do. I'm an intuitive energy healer. And let me just tell you that when Amanda knows so much, like when she just blows my mind. I see her, someone will post something on Facebook and she'll say, well, that is because I'm like, oh my gosh, wow. To have that much knowledge is just, I'm always impressed by how much you know. I want you to know that I am always impressed by how much you know.
So I put in a lot of time in researching, and I don't think a lot of people know. I read almost 100 books last year.
Oh, I know. I've seen your stacks. Like you're like that. This is for this month. I'm like, and you read heavy. Like I read romance and crap stuff all the time. Love it. And you're reading all this intense stuff. I'm like, good for you. Love
it's a dirty job, but somebody's got to do it.
So let's talk about brain health. We want to talk about an overview, and then our focus today is on automatic negative thoughts and what to do with them, because we all have them, and you're going to identify them for us. And once I heard you talk about these, I was like, yep. So I'm going to just hand it over and let you go, and we'll banter back and forth as we talk.
Awesome. Well, I'd like to start off with the fact that we have 70,000 thoughts per day, and we don't realize we have all this stuff running around in our heads all day long. And the thing I'd like to point out is, what are you focusing on the most? What thoughts are you focusing on the most? Now, as I was describing to you, Yvette, earlier, the amygdala system automatically picks up negative thoughts because we're looking for protection. And our egos, our childlike self, is always looking for protection. So a lot of these automatic negative thoughts will arise from that childlike self, the ego, the shadow, whatever you want to call it, for protection. So realize that thoughts and feelings aren't facts, but they are data points to let us know the state of our mind. So once we realize that these thoughts and these feelings are the state of our mind, we can begin to readjust them. So that way we can allow ourselves to feel, because we do need to allow that. Or do we need to step back and do we need to reframe? And reframe is a popular psychological term for taking a lot of these thoughts and turning them back around. So
I want to tie this into energy work for a moment, because our base chakra is about safety and security. And that is the first chakra that develops, because we are, we can't feed ourselves. We can't take care of ourselves. So that is developing. So it absolutely makes sense that that core of ourselves is always checking for safety and security.
Yep. And a lot of times, our root chakra is where everything begins. So it's the part of the infant part, and all of it's tied. There's a reason why your chakras go in a line all the way up to the crown. And even when I had my logo redone, a friend of mine did it for me. and she redid it as these bubbles, and the bubbles lined up with the chakras. And I told her that, and she's like, I did not realize that did that. And I'm like, but this is perfect. That's fine.
Yeah.
Because because with energy, as far as now, I have to tell you, I have a degree in physics from Roanoke College. So that might be a little reason why I know a little bit about energy. And our thoughts are energetic as well.
Yep.
So when we look at healing work, energy work, we have to think of where is our mind at? Because it is just electrical signals.
Yep.
Being passed back and forth across the brain. And they may be too high, they may be too low. So it's looking at the form of those waves as those signals are getting tossed back and forth. This is where energy work is helpful, where Reiki can come in and help people to help rebalance that electrical system. Most people don't realize that's what it does. Yeah. So if that gives everybody a good idea of how does brain health tie to Reiki, that's part of it. That's part of it. So
I do want to, for those who are newer and may not have heard of base chakra or root chakra, I want people to know that they're the same thing. It's just a different name.
Right.
I just want to, because we both use different words. So I want people to know that. Okay. Go ahead.
Awesome.
Back to you.
So let me start off with all or nothing ants. They're very easy to detect. They sound, and I'll give you examples of them because I think the examples describe better than anything else. Here's one. No, nothing ever works out for me. Now, a lot of these all or nothing ants, they'll use very severe terminology. It's literally all or nothing. There's like a lot of no's, or it's like back in during the pandemic, because that was mentioned, all of my freedom is being taken away from me during quarantine. And a lot of people felt that. So it's that black and white thinking. So that tends to throw the brain into rumination, all or nothing thinking. And they lead into other different types of ants too. But
so as a reminder, an ant is an automatic negative thought.
Yes.
And the all or nothing, I know that when I run into people that are all or nothing, there's like that doomsday type feeling around the all or nothing. Like nothing ever goes my way. And it's so easy to like slide into that.
It's soul crushing.
Yes.
So we want to do everything we can to not crush our souls, and that's one of them. It can lead into something called less than ants. Like we were talking about earlier, how women tend to tie their self-worth to what they can do for other people. It's been nurtured into us. And so we'll come up with phrases of, I'm not good enough.
Yep.
I'm not a good enough mom. I'm not a good enough dad. I'm not a good daughter. I'm not a good, all of these things, because we see our value in what we do for other people. And you feel inferior, you feel insignificant, and it kind of fuels this hopeless, helpless thing too. So, and they're very toxic because they will kill another soul crushing one. They kill your self-esteem. It may have started out when we were in school and said, oh, I'm not pretty enough. I'm not popular enough. Then it goes into nobody likes me. Right. To the other ant.
You reminded me when you talked about this less than ant, it reminded me, I don't even know how old I was. I was in my teen years, which is like the horrible years for girls. And I liked to cook, and I still remember going to school. It was Christmas time, literally with a garbage bag filled with individual packages of cookies for people, right? Because it was my way of having people like me, is I would give them food.
Yeah.
And I can still picture myself like getting on the bus with that huge garbage bag filled with plates of cookies for people. And it's taken me time to, I love to cook. It's an expression of love for me, but untying that, it's how I, why people like me versus it's an expression of love, two different things.
Right. We want to make sure we don't fall in that trap of, basically overdoing something to the point that it mixes the signals. It mixes the signals in your head. Like for other people, they'll go, oh, that's just Yvette, she goes overboard. Without even saying, well, this is how she is, this is how she expresses love. And what can I do to love back?
Yep.
So we've got to start changing people's minds about how people express themselves, because their self-expression is usually, it's what's going on inside of them. So if somebody's yelling at you, it's not you that's the problem. You may have caused a problem, but it's not you that's the problem. It's the person with that problem. That's the problem. So it's like I sometimes share a meme about Jack Sparrow and going, I don't think you understand what the problem actually is. The problem is not the problem. The problem, so. And
I just want to share. So I'm right now I'm sitting in the room where I do my energy work, and I have a box of mason jars that have not been used in my closet. And whenever my grandmother is here, and my grandmother is the one who taught me food is love, right? You never left her house hungry. If you left her house hungry, it was your fault. Well, the mason jar lids pop when she's present, and it just popped as we were talking about. It's like, hi, Gram, you're here.
Yeah, they tend to love to hang around with their family. I swear, my grandfather, after I drove his truck for a little while after he passed away, and I was taking care of the family properties, something always went wrong with that thing, and it was small. It wasn't anything big. It was just small. It was just aggravating enough to go, yeah, you're playing a joke. He was a prankster. And I remember pulling a door handle one day, and the door handle broke off in my hand, and I'm like,
hey, Grampy.
You're up there. You're laughing. I can see this. You're laughing. So,
so we've covered two automatic negative thoughts.
Yeah.
All or nothing, less than.
Right.
So what's next?
Just the bad ants. These are people who have nothing nice to say ever. And these are the people you go, I think I'm going to limit my time. They can also fuel some of our bad habits, such as like the internet's very good at this. Media is very good at this, at picking all the bad things that's wrong with us so that we buy into the product and become better.
Yes.
There's not, it's like, where's the healing? Where's the real healing, folks? So,
well, that's what marketing is based. I mean, that's the marketing to women, right? To be thin enough to get rid of your wrinkles, your gray hair, your sags, your bags, all
goes back to the I'm not good enough. I'm not. Yeah. So, like saying that the world is always getting worse and worse every day. That's one of those. This was one. So Dr. Eamon works also with Miley Cyrus. During the pandemic, she came out and started doing a whole bunch of stuff around brain health, and let it out that she was working with Dr. Eamon. One of her aunts was, my record debuted at number 2 on the Billboard charts. I am so disappointed. Like, really? Number 2 is great. Right.
Who's Dr. Eamon, by the way? Because for people who've never...
Okay, for people who don't know, Dr. Daniel Amen is my brain health coach. He is the one that taught me everything about brain health. He is a double board certified neurologist and psychiatrist. He has clinics around the world, not around the world yet, not yet. He's building 4 in Canada. But he has 10 in America. One of them is in perspective to Appalachia. Here we have one in Reston, which is about 3 to 3.5 hours away towards Washington, D.C.
Okay.
And I've actually taken my stepdaughter there. She has had her brain scanned. So, and that's really interesting. That's another topic for another day.
But I appreciate you giving him definition, right? Because you use his name all the time, and I've come to know who he is based on conversations with you, but it's the first time you dropped his name in here, so I wanted to make sure that people knew who he was.
Oh yeah, no problem.
Okay.
No problem at all. So if we move from just the bad ants, because that's pretty relatively easy to understand. They're just people who tend to be negative, and you're like, hey, your vibe is off. We go into guilt beating ants. This is another one for the ladies. Yeah, you can see your face. You just like, oh yeah. These are like, I ought to, I shoulds. The shoulda, coulda, woulda ants, as I call them. Like, I ought to exercise more. That's one of mine. I should exercise more. And the thing is, we have to move from that ought to, should, to like, let's give purpose, let's give value. Let's find it does your value line up with your purpose, and how can we add exercise in? So it's taking those thoughts that you're like struggling with and figuring out, well, how do I make it more personal? How do I make it fit in with my values? And how do I use it to define the person who I am? So the guilt beating ants tend to, like I said, they're should and shaming. And we have to give ourselves more grace, especially women. But here's another one. And this one is kind of crossed with a different ant, which I'll get into because it's a big ant.
Can I say something about the guilt beating? Are you,
were you absolutely, go for it. Go for it.
I have to say that my husband has been so beneficial for me with the guilt beating ants, because I can be driven by shoulds at time. And one of the things that I've learned is to say, well, why do I feel I need to do that? And seeing whether the word should, ought to, I know we're going to talk about what to do about these, but it just came up, and he'll push at me. He's like, why do you feel you need to do that? Why do you feel you need to do that? And it often comes from very old, and it's tied into the less than ant for me very, very often.
Yeah. And in my significant other, he's the same way. He's like, why are you doing that? When ladies, you found a good man when he's telling your ants to cut it out, give him a boot, because men give us so much grace, especially if you tend to be hetero. That's fine. If you're not, you will find a partner that will be more forgiving and be graceful, and that'll be the thing that they teach you, especially if you're not good with being graceful for yourself. That good partner is one that teaches you how to be graceful with yourself. So, and they help you stop those guilt beating ants. But like, here's one. My struggles are my fault. I should do better. I should be better. Like, no, your struggles are not your fault. We can't help what happens to us. We can only control our reaction to what happens to us. So, or I'm selfish for seeking help. I shouldn't have to do it. Now, I hope nobody in our circle says that. But if you're like thinking, oh, I should be able to handle this on my own. And a lot of women are like that. That's one of mine. You have to say, no, I do need help. I do need to ask for help. Because, Virgos, we don't like to ask for help.
Oh, that's my mother. We won't talk about that. But I think that I see it in my practice that oftentimes the age range of my clients are over 40, because they've come to, I think 40 is just this glorious time. They've come to that, like, I'm done. Like, it's time for me to do something for me. I deserve this. And that's breaking away from those automatic negative thoughts.
40, I will say I'm 48. I will turn 49 later this year, but I will say being in my 40s has been the most freeing thing in my life.
Yep.
Because I just finally stopped saying, I don't care what anybody else thinks anymore. And that's the most free, that I don't give a, you know what, that kicks in, and it's very freeing.
It is.
And I recommend it for every lady.
I really would love, and I think that the work that you are doing with your clients, and, I'd love to do that and get it to be an earlier age where there is that freedom of all of those automatic negative thoughts that are coming in, the shoulds, the guilty, the less than, like, oh, gosh, if we could break that pattern for people, the freedom that folks would have would be amazing.
I have just as many male clients as I do female clients, and it happens to men too.
Yep.
And this is part of my work with kids, is we start breaking these ants. All of these ants fuel mental health disorders. And one of the things that determines whether or not you have Alzheimer's or not, or when it starts, is the fact of how much you let these build up. You take care of them. My grandmother could have lived longer, but her Alzheimer's was fast. When we realized what was going on after my grandfather passed away in 2015, within that year after, I looked at my family. I said, she won't be here with us in 2 years. And I was right. The doctors had put her at a lower stage of Alzheimer's than I would have put her at. And I said, I don't think you understand. She's further down the line. Yeah. Yeah. And she just really gave up. She really gave up towards the end.
I can see where that they would merge.
And she never sought therapy. She never did any personal work, healthy work. She was always stressed. Yeah. And she was one of those, her ants were the big ant for her was that, just the bad ants. Like the world was always out to get her. And it's not, it never was. It was just her perception. Yeah.
Okay. What's our next ant?
Our next ant is labeling ants. These are very short. They're like, I am lazy, which is not true. Nobody's lazy. Your brain takes up 20% of your body's energy. 20%. Wow. Wow. It is the most energy consuming organ in your body. Your brain needs time where it needs breaks. So you are never lazy. Your brain needs to rest, and it's telling you it needs to rest.
That's fascinating. That goes and that goes along with the need, whether you choose meditation, or walking out in nature, sitting quietly without, the TV, the internet, the scrolling, all of that stuff. Good night's sleep.
Yes. Something I've been working on is my sleep. It was always a struggle for me. I have Ring of Fire ADHD, which means my brain never stops. That's probably why I'm always reading like stacks of books. And having a brain that's literally on fire, that's always going. It needs rest too. And I have to do things for it that'll give it rest. So, yeah, I need those breaks too.
Want to do a step in for a moment and say that is one of the things that you do with your clients, is help them with their brain health. Now, can you work with people distance as well as in person?
Yes, I do have a couple of clients that are at distance.
Okay, so I want to, if someone is watching this and going, oh my gosh, I can't shut my brain off, or I'm really recognizing what Amanda and Yvette are talking about, and it has to do with your brain health, you will definitely want to reach out to Amanda to help you with it.
And let me pull back in the work that you do.
Mhm.
Reiki is a way of giving yourself a break.
Yes, it is.
Because your energy person that you're working with is trying to make sure that your energy is not full. So it's part of the healing process.
One of my favorite sounds when I am working with somebody is the sound of snoring. Right
Oh,
behind
yeah.
me, right behind me on this table back here. If they're in person, right? I'm working and we're doing the energy, and then I hear, I'm like, oh yes, it's such a beautiful sound, because I know that their ego has stepped out, the work is being done, their brain is being quiet. Oh, it's a beautiful sound.
Yeah. Usually
I'm
when
so
I hear
sorry I fell asleep. No, don't be sorry you fell asleep. It's a great thing.
usually when I hear snoring, I'm like, oh, sleep apnea. That's another thing we got to take care of.
Well, whether it's the
In your
snoring or the
case,
deep,
that might be good.
yeah, the deep, well, it's not always the snoring, but it's the deep breathing. Like I know that they've left the brain,
They've
like
left
they're
their
not,
brain. That's good. Get out of here.
Yeah.
Go take
Yeah.
a break.
yeah.
The spirit
All right.
break. Yeah. All right. So
So
my
what's our
next
next one?
is fortune telling ants, where you're trying to predict.
Yes.
So here's a line of thought, and this happens to a lot of people because the fear of death is number 2 on the scale of fears. You want to guess what number 1 is?
Oh, I used to know this. Fear of public speaking.
Yep.
Yay!
So this is the train of thought. I can't speak in public, so I'm going to lose my job. I'm going to be afraid of interviewing because I lost my job. So I won't be able to get a new job because I'm a loser for having lost a job because I can't public speak. My wife will divorce me because I couldn't public speak and I lost my job. And I'll end up on the streets, and then all the way down to I should kill myself. Really?
Wow. That's quite the
leap. And the thing
Yeah.
is, some people will do this. So especially if they have just the bad ants on top of this. So you can cascade. Fortune telling ants are cascading ants. For example, my stepdaughter yesterday morning couldn't get out of bed. She lives in Lynchburg with her mom. And she's getting bullied at school, which is not helpful. And I'm sorry she doesn't want to go to school. But what had started all of it, the mom calling me, she won't get out of bed again, and we had talked to her about it, and she was cascading. If I get out of bed, I have to go to school, I'm going to get bullied, she's fortune telling.
Right.
Because it may or may not happen.
Right.
You can't guarantee it. So
yeah. And the fortune telling, I have a lot of years in sales as well. And when I would train and work with people in sales, they would say, but I don't want to make that call. I don't want to reach out because it's dinner time. I'm like, how do you know? Like dinner, some people eat dinner at 5 and some people eat it at 9. You just cut out 4 hours of your time that you can't work.
Right.
Or I know they're going to say no. How do you know they're going to say no? Yeah.
You never know. I mean, the thing is, it's and then this is where my physics degree comes in again, is probability.
Mm-hmm.
So they want you to call around dinner time because there's a probability somebody's going to pick up. You're looking at the numbers of the probability of people picking up, not whether or not they're going to say no.
Right.
So.
Okay. Fortune telling. Got it.
Fortune telling. It's where you're trying to predict the future that hasn't happened yet. Yay, anxiety. That's how you feel, anxiety. So our next ant is mind reading ants. Kind of goes along with those fortune telling ants. Mind reading ants is when, let's say you're walking, like this would happen to teen girls in a school. They're walking down a hallway. They see a group of girls sitting there talking. one kind of glances your way and they're laughing. Who's to say they're just not laughing at their friend's joke? They're not laughing at you. They just have to look that way because they needed to look that way.
Right. Right. Right.
So you don't know. And you don't know until you ask or until you approach the problem.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
And it's like, especially when you're working with people, like you might think my boss doesn't like me. If your boss didn't like you, they would have gotten rid of you.
Or, you've sent a text message or a Facebook message and the person hasn't answered. Or that you saw that they read it and they obviously aren't interested, or that, all of the mind reading that we do, that until we check back in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
You got to give people grace. Maybe they're going through their own anxiety and their fortune telling and they're going, wow.
Right. Right.
They've got their own ants too. You're not the only one that's infested. So yeah, you got to give people grace. So there's something called the 18-40-60 rule that Dr. Amen loves. And it goes something, where'd it go? I don't want to mess it up. So let me see. There it is. When you're 18, you worry about what everyone else is thinking of you. When you're 40, you don't care what anyone else is thinking about you. We just talked about that. And when you're 60, you realize no one has been thinking about you at all.
Well, I'm a little over 3 years away from the 60 mark, so I'm not going to care for a few more, and then I'll realize that.
And it just depends on where we are in our self-acceptance, where we sit there and go, okay, yeah, nobody's really. And it's really that. It's the ego. It's the ego protecting itself again. So our next ant, there'll be if only, or I'll be happy when ants. So if only I were taller, skinnier, prettier, something like that. I'll be happier when I retire. Really, you really, because the thing is, when you retire, you're really sitting with yourself.
Yeah.
So you better be in love with yourself when you're sitting with yourself by yourself.
Yeah.
And I found that most people, when they do retire, they finally get to do the things that they've always wanted to do. They really learned that they can live out their purpose, values. And I'm saying, why are you waiting till you retire?
Right.
Live them now.
Right.
But this is why I'm such a Gary Vee fan, because he's telling you, live it now.
Yeah, because I see that as one of the benefits of having, my father died when he was 34. So I have this perception of life, like you just live it because you just don't know. And I forget waiting to retire. Sorry.
No.
But the if then is like when I get that degree, or when it also sets you up for never being okay with what is, because it's always the what's next.
A lot of people don't understand that when they set a goal, you always have to have goals beyond the goal. And you have to make sure that they tie back into your purpose and your values and the way you want your life to be. And when you say to yourself, if only, or I'll be happier when, you have to sit there and go, but why can't I be happy now? Why can't I choose joy now? Really, really investigate why you're struggling with those things. Because that's another thing I do with my client. I help them define their values and their purpose so that they can live the life that they want now.
Yeah.
Because there's no reason not to.
And that's one of the benefits of a gratitude journal or a gratitude practice.
Yeah.
Whether you write it down or not, starting, ending, doing both of your day book oh, whatever it is. What's it called when one side and the other? Come on, man, give me the word.
Left, right.
Okay. So starting or ending your day with
Yep.
gratitude. Boy, when you are in that fear mode or that, I'm looking at my notes here, the bad ants, if you are able to start in gratitude, that is the pot in which you plant your day.
Right. So one thing I love gratitude. I love positive affirmations. I actually help clients develop positive affirmations. And I used to make fun of positive affirmations before I actually used them. So I will tell you a quick story. So I was in a car going to Richmond to see my mentor with 3 other people who just happen to have a darker skin tone than I do. And they're very, and I've noticed with our darker brothers and sisters that they tend to have a higher value of self-worth in a lot of cases, or they've worked on that for themselves. And I said in the car, I'm so stupid. And you imagine 3 people yelling at you.
Setting you straight.
It's like, really? They're like, you need to do positive affirmations. And I'm like, whoa. Because I only knew about positive affirmations was the way the movies showed them. The way that media showed them is very hokey, is very, so I'm like, okay, if I'm going to believe these things, if I'm going to actually use these, and it was before I actually understood what Yahweh meant with my Christian background. Yahweh means I am. The word for God, I am. Realizing God is inside each one of us. And before I actually said, and I'm like, okay, how am I going to make these work? Because I'm a brainiac and I'm like, I'm not normal. Another bad ant. Okay, there we go. And I said, I have to give it specificity. Specificity, there you go. Yes. Easier said than done. So I had to get really specific on what I wanted with the ant in order for me to believe it. Once I started doing this practice with myself, I then transferred it to people who I was working with. Once they saw that they were getting results from something very small, very specific in a short amount of time, they were like, okay, now I'm a believer in positive affirmations. So
awesome. And I think that when we, you and I have spoken about how when we've traversed the trail, when we can speak about our vulnerabilities, when we're transparent about the paths that we've walked in the arenas that we teach and work with our clients, there's a connection that can happen with the people that we work with. So I so appreciate that personal story about creating the mantras or affirmations, because to go from not believing to getting their power and then teaching it is incredibly powerful.
Well, I'm also a big believer in post-traumatic growth. So
okay, what else do we have?
Our last ant is called blaming ants. And Dr. Amen called these red ants because they're not only all over you, they get all over other people. So when you blame others, it's your fault. It's your fault I feel this way. Really, that sounds narcissistic right there, but we'll talk about that another time. They see life as beyond their own personal control. So you get this a lot with teenagers too. Sometimes they'll feel like a victim of circumstances. If only that hadn't happened. If only you guys had money, like, talking about your parents, like,
right.
And they can give up trying, like, why try? Because it won't go right for me. So blaming ants are actually kind of intertwined into a lot of the other ants as well. Once again, the ego protecting itself by seeking blame in something else. So, but I have a quote here from Vernon Howard, which helps look at these ants in a different way. Permitting your life to be taken over by another person is like letting the waiter eat your dinner.
Oh, that's so good. That is so good.
Because what you do with blame is you give your power over to somebody else.
Yes.
It means that you
Yes.
don't have any power. And all the power is within you anyways.
And it's similar to, isn't there a saying, you probably know this saying, because you know so much about, like when you're not forgiving is like taking the poison and expecting somebody else to die.
Yes,
Something along those lines.
yes.
And that feels the same for the blaming.
Yep.
And my beliefs are that we chose our lives. We chose the situation. We chose the lessons that we're here to learn. How we learn them, can be different and different pathways along the way. But that has helped me with the blaming piece. It's just like, I chose this. I chose this.
This is talked about in neurology and psychology circles, because even if something happens to you,
mm-hmm.
your reaction is often the result of what happened to you. Now, your reaction is where you have to take a little bit of your own blame and your own accountability and your own responsibility. Because like we've talked about earlier, trauma is a reaction, not a memory. And our bodies will put us back into experience the trauma until, once again, this is where body work comes in, energy work comes in, until you can turn things around. Because the reason why we go back to that trauma is hoping for a different ending.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, if your body's trained to have one reaction or a specific reaction, it will always react that way until you break the cycle.
Yes. And I have found one of the tools that I use in my healing practice is light language, which goes beyond the ego. Like it gets, and the healing that I've been able to do personally and with clients by utilizing light language has been amazing, because that ego is so, again, this is not my area. This brain health is not my area, but I know that it will do everything. Your brain will do everything to hold on to the stories that it's told itself. And so having to like get underneath it to dissipate is so important.
The ego is your child. It's your childlike self from the ages of 0 to 7. So if your family was very unstable, if you had there were a lot of problems, which that's my story, that's part of my story.
Mm-hmm.
That ego works very hard to protect itself.
Yep.
And there is a way that and I do teach this, is I teach clients how to reparent themselves, or how to reparent their child.
Yeah.
To reparent their wounded ego, their wounded child, because that can stop them from moving forward.
Yes.
So they have to learn how to heal their child.
Yes. Okay, so we've covered the ants. And we had talked about there's for the Facebook Live portion, you have a list that you'll be able to post to share these, right? Which is good for people who like the visual. So what do we do? We've got a little bit of time left. What do we do with these ants? How do you help? I don't want you to give it all away, right? Because we could take days on this training.
Right.
What do you do with ants? How do you
Well, I
work with
will
them?
give everybody the 5 questions, because
Okay.
Dr. Amen does give this away. And the 5 questions, which were developed by Byron Katie, who is a spiritualist. This is the first question. Is it true? A lot of people can stop after the first question because they go, God, that's just ridiculous what I'm thinking. That's just a ridiculous thought. I mean, really. And sometimes it'll stop it, but sometimes you'll just have that really deep emotional connection to the thought. And you'll have to go beyond the is it true question to number 2. Is it absolutely true with 100% certainty?
Yeah, that one's, boy, to have something pass that test is,
Right, because we know not everything's 100%. As a physicist, I know nothing's 100%.
Right.
We might get close to 99, maybe. But we still
Very
have to
true.
make room for just
Error.
whatever else, right?
Yep.
So we move on to the third question because it's made us go to that question. We go on ahead and move to the third question. How do I feel when I believe this thought? So you're recognizing the emotion behind the thought. You're allowing room for your limbic system to move in and go, well, this makes me feel sad, or this makes me feel angry. That this thought is making me feel angry. It's because sometimes thoughts fuel feelings and sometimes feelings fuel thoughts. So it's figuring out which one's doing which. Is the emotion fueling the thought, or is the thought fueling the emotion? And then we start the process of breaking that apart. So the next question is, how would I feel if I couldn't have this thought? So you're looking for the opposing nature of anger, which is joy, or sadness, which is well, let's say fear, because the opposite of fear is always love. The opposite of love, and love is just action. Things done in love are done in action. So the opposite of fear is always action, but it's also realizing you need love. It's also realizing we need to put that love value into our language. So then the fifth step is not so much a question, but it's like turn the thought around to its exact opposite. Like, I'm not good enough. And it's taking, well, why do I feel like I'm not good enough? You could go down that, or how does it make me feel I'm not good enough? Well, it makes me feel empty. It makes me feel, fearful. It makes me whatever. And then you say, well, who would I be without this thought? I would be, well, I'd feel valued. I'd feel loved. And then you can say, I am worthy. I am worthy to be loved. I am worthy of taking rest. I am worthy of going to therapy. I am worthy of going to the doctor to get myself checked up. Because a lot of women they will put themselves aside for other people.
Right.
And the thing is, they have to pull themselves back and say, I'm not going to be good for anybody else until I take care of myself.
And I hear that a lot with the clients that come through my door, or, they're long distance, but that having to come to the point of the realization that I am enough, I am worthy of the time. And because when we fill our cup, we have enough with the overflow to take care of others. It's about allowing the overflow to be where we give of ourselves,
right?
Not from the cup that's depleted.
Yes, because if you keep depleting your cup first, if you don't give yourself enough self-love, you have nothing left to give. Or what you are giving is going to put you, because you're not using self-love to overflow your cup, you'll end up burnt out.
Yes.
Or
and then
overworked.
And then there's that feeling of anger and resentment, and they're always taking from me, and like that's a whole nother conversation, Amanda. But so I took these down. I mean, I've taken them down before, I wrote them down again, but what I envisioned was, this is a great note to put on the mirror, right? Because that's oftentimes where thoughts come in. We get up in the morning, we're washing our face or brushing our teeth, and we hear that stuff come in. And to have this note and say, is it true? Is it absolutely true with 100% certainty? How do I feel when I think this thought? And just bringing yourself through it. Again, what a great way to start your day.
One of my clients took something, I have a dream board. It's in the living room, and everybody can see it when they walk in, because it's my goals. It should be the center of my life. And I had a saying on it, and I gave it to one of my clients who did a home visit with me. And it said, feelings aren't facts, thoughts aren't facts, adjust accordingly.
Mm.
And when you take those feelings and thoughts and you go and you're able to question them, and you're able to go, I can readjust. And it's these small shifts. Most people don't realize you don't have to make big, huge, giant leaps. You can make very small 1% adjustments to your thoughts, to your emotions, to feel more complete and more whole. Because just by doing a little, if you do 1% every day, or even if you don't do it every day, but if you do it, let's say 1% adjustments for 270 days, you're still going to come out better than a lot of people around you who won't do the work.
And I remember reading, I don't know the percentage. I don't know if it's 70, 80% of the time, an airplane is actually off course most of the time, but it still gets to its destination because it just keeps readjusting on its journey.
And it's like NASA tossing a rover to Mars. Now, I stayed up one night and I kind of watched NASA going through the last 7 minutes of heck. And because you don't know until, and it kept adjusting. And then the rover landed and the rover was fine. But it's like, this is what we call moonshots.
Yeah.
And that's what our lives are. It's the daily small adjustments to being our best self.
Yes. And so I know, and as people who are watching this want to be their best selves. So how can people reach out to you? What are the ways that they can connect with you so that they can work with you on brain health?
So I do have a website, creativegeniussolutionsllc.com, and I can give that to you. I have a Calendly link for people to book appointments with, and I'll give you my phone number because I'm still fighting with Google about my email. So you can text. I would say tell people text me first, introduce yourself, text me. Because a lot of times you don't know, I'm actually might be working with a client and I'll get back to you. So texting is a lot faster. So that's 540. I almost forgot my phone number. 268. Let me make sure. 268-0084.
Okay, so 540-268-0084.
Yeah.
And I'll have you post that underneath the live video. And when both of us post this on our YouTube channels, we'll post the phone number. And to reach me, healingwithyvette.com, Healing with Yvette on Facebook, Healing with Yvette on Instagram. We keep it really simple. And there's the opportunity to book on my website, book appointments right from there. So, Amanda, thank you for sharing your knowledge. Thank you for, this brain health can seem like such a heavy topic, and I just enjoyed the laughter and the camaraderie in having this conversation with you.
Thank you.
So
I want people to think that it's a serious subject, but yet you can still have fun.
Yes.
So,
all right. Have a good day, everybody.
You too. Thank you.